You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com, where we have past podcasts, blogs, and a couple items for sale. So check us out, beardedtheologians.com. Thank you for listening, and enjoy this week's show. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
So this week we're jumping back into the lectionary. It's been a while since we've been here, or maybe not. It's hard to remember.
It really probably hasn't.
It's actually it has been because we actually went through Lent doing something different. So would encourage you to go back and listen to our Lenten series on Bible verses out of context, and enjoy that series, that 6-week study that we did on that. But this week we're looking in the lectionary, and in the lectionary text, the John reading, which really starts at 21, 1 through 19, we wanted to set up not, we could have spent an entire series almost on this alone. And so we're picking out of looking at that third appearance, starting at verse 14. And so I'm going to let Zach do his thing as we look at John 21, 14 through 19. Zach, take it away.
Here from the Gospel of John. There was now a third time that Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger and you used to fasten your own belt and go wherever you wished, but when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go." He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. After he said this to him, after this, he said to him, "Follow me." There's a whole lot here. I love this story so much, but Matt, when you hear just that quick little story, quick little passage there in John's Gospel, what really tugs at your heart and soul?
I think the question that we would have to wrestle with if I were preaching this, I'm not preaching this week, but what does it mean to feed my lambs today?
Mm-hmm.
And is Jesus calling to us, and are we attentive to Peter, like Peter, who felt remorse over what his experience of the his part to play in Jesus's death and resurrection, and that remorse is there, and that Jesus's act of grace here is amazing, and it's a great example for us to follow. But I think, what does it mean to feed my sheep today? And I think that's something to really wrestle with and really process as we think about that, as we're coming out of a global pandemic time where we've been having to do ministry differently. And yes, we're still taking precautions, and there's still things that we're kind of still doing, and we're hopefully we're inching our way back into this new normal that we're in. What does it mean to feed my sheep? I think that's a great thing to wrestle with on this day. And so, Zach, as you think about what is here, anything I said, what strikes a chord with you?
Well, for me, this is one of my favorite conversations that Jesus has, or really, it's one of my favorite conversations that we find in all of Scripture. Partly because I love Peter so much. Of all of the disciples and people that we read about, for me, he's almost the most human. He's definitely, for me, the most relatable. And we see that in this conversation. Simon Peter, "Do you love me?" "I do." Tell me, "Yeah, I do." Feed my lambs. And then a second time, and you feel that that hurt, that frustration build in them of, I do. What do you want? What do you want from me? What do I need to do to show you that I love you? And I feel that deeply in our own humanity, that we find ourselves in that same way, right? Whether it's with Jesus or other people, or however we are in our day to day, we have these conversations. I just don't. I don't know that we can go through this lifetime and not have this exact conversation with someone, whether it be, whether it be God, ourselves, our spouses, people, whatever it is. That I love you. What do I need to do to show you? And Jesus's answer is so simple, yet so hard. Feed my sheep, feed my lambs, tend to them, right? And the question that it always leads me back to, which is, and it always leads me back to what the religious leaders asked Jesus is, well, who are the sheep? Who's my neighbor, right? And also a simple question with yet a such hard and complex answer, because we're people and we don't do it well sometimes, right? And so, but it's that last, outside of all the conversational aspects and just feeling deeply deeply humanized and invested into this conversation because it feels so real in my own life. It's just that last little bit. And after he said this to him, he just simply says, follow me. It's that same call that Peter heard on the beach at the very first time. Hey, Peter, follow me. Okay, let's go. And it comes all the way back around full circle for Peter in that same call these years later, with everything that has happened in the fullness of the life and death and resurrection of Christ. It's the same call to follow me. And that's really, really grounding for me, no matter what kind of day we have, or who we're working with, or who we're just in front of and being pastoral or human to. It all comes back to that same, to feed the sheep, to tend the sheep, and to feed the lambs. It comes back to follow me. I've taught you all the things. Follow me. And I love it and I hate it because it's so simple, yet it's so hard sometimes.
Well, and I think that Peter's response is, like, especially in verse 15, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus just says, feed my lambs.
Yeah.
And then he asks the second time, Jesus comes back at him and says, hey, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, I mean, and so there's kind of almost this bent up, like, frustration of, like, yes, I do. Can you not understand? Like, and you're married and have kids of teenage angsty years, and you know how that is. Like we have seen this play out in our daily lives. And I think that idea of, I liked how you said identifying who the sheep are. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something in our community that we have neglected to realize, that there are people who don't get connected because we're not looking for them. Mm-hmm. And we miss the boat on people so many times on things of, and I know it's because we don't do evangelism well. I mean, I just know that. And I know evangelism needs to change in the way that we handle that.
It's that, and we other people, and we ignore, we just, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, I think the healthiest way I've ever heard how to have that conversation is, hey, and is the activity of active listening. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm going to listen to you and you listen to me, and I'm going to repeat back to you things. And I'm going to ask questions on things that I don't understand, so that I can fully invest myself into you, and then you can invest yourself into me, and be in a serious dialogue. Like, I think of we call it the bearded bar at the coffee shop. Mm-hmm. There's a group of men that gather at the coffee shop bar here in town, and, like, literally and it started with just me sitting at the coffee bar, and then people started, and I got to know those. I literally entered into their lives as we had conversations with them. And now, after almost a year later, even, as we've come back from COVID and the restaurant's been open and I've been allowed to sit back up at the bar, we have now entered into faith conversations where we're having some really good faith conversations that we wouldn't have had at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is where getting to know. I think the example I see here, it's not, we don't have to ask them 3 times in a row, but we have to keep, engaging in with those sheep and loving for those sheep and caring for those sheep where they are, not worrying about where they've been, but the hope would be to connect them with Jesus down the road. And so what does that look like what does that look like in your faith community? What would that look like for you to feed your sheep in your community that you live in right now? I think that's a good thing to wrestle with.
Well, and it's relationship building, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, I mean, active listening is a whole nother podcast for a whole nother time. Something I learned when I had a real job, and I was a salesman, is you don't listen to respond. You don't listen to fix the customer's problem. You listen to hear what they need, right? And as people, it's really, really hard for us because we do not active listen. We listen to respond, and before the person's even done, we're formulating our response, and we miss a whole part of it, right? We're not engaged. But to do this, I mean, it's relationships. It's building relationships with people, getting to know them. I mean, it's feed my lambs, tend my sheep, feed my sheep. I mean, there's a progression there. Start with the young, feed the least of these, essentially, right? With lambs being small sheep or baby sheep, and then tend to my sheep. Be there, be present, and then feed them again, right? I mean, that's just huge. And I mean, we could jump in and talk about the relationship between these 3 questions and the 3 times Peter denies Jesus and some things like that too, because there's some significance there as to, and I that points back to the frustration of Peter of, what do I need to do to show you? But I find it, I don't know, I love this story because we see all of that. We see huge grace and love from Jesus. We see Peter being just like us, and in my opinion, reacting exactly how I would, of, what do I need to do? Just tell me, but Jesus staying in that relationship, staying in that call, and bringing it all the way back to, follow me. I've shown you all the things. Now go and do it.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good spot to land. I really do believe that the idea, and we could definitely do a series on relationship building, and probably should write a book on it together, because that's all we ever talk about. So Abigail and Cokesbury, if you're listening again, we definitely would love to have that book deal. Now we've already pitched like 3 book ideas in the last year. I guess season 6 we get the book.
That's right.
So we'd love to have that book and just talk to us about what we'd like to write about. We'll write something just to have that book to go on the clearance shelf eventually.
Straight to clearance.
Straight to clearance. Can we just have a straight to clearance release? We would be okay with that. But I think that idea of relationship building, not only with us, but with Jesus too. How often do we need to reconnect with Jesus and admit that, like, yes, I do love you. Like,
right. But doing the same thing and actively listening and being present, instead of our relationship with Jesus being one of response, right? And not active participation and listening.
Or as I like to think of it, it's not transactional. Relationship building should never be transactional. And so, please don't make it like, when we're trying to build relationships with people, it's not about what the end goal of real good evangelism is, not getting them to church. It's connecting them with Jesus.
Right.
And I think that that's if we can process that, and when we do share our faith and listen to others share their faith or where they've been, the thing is not to respond to get them to Jesus, but to listen how you can show where maybe they see Jesus in their life and they just don't recognize Jesus yet. And I think that that's where we can build mountains out of molehills on that.
So what you're trying to say is, don't play music on a plane.
Yeah. Or you don't have to have the bumper sticker, t-shirt, coffee mug.
Right. Just be you.
Just be
present. Yeah. I'm here for it.
So with that in mind, we want to encourage you to go and check out 6 years worth of amazing Beardcast and podcast things.
It's a stretch.
Hey, it's amazing. We've been doing it for 6 years. I don't care what you say.
That is the amazing part.
We do recognize that those first couple of episodes when we were trying to figure out what we were doing are now hilarious to watch.
Yes.
We may even replay the one with our wives so we don't have to have our wives back on, because that would in some ways be easier. Connect with us through social media, through Facebook or anywhere on social media. We're pretty much everywhere. You can connect with us. And so for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
Go Broncos.
Hey, there you go. I can get on board with that.
Mark, I got the hat.
I know, I see it.
No, I'm telling Mark, I got the hat.
Oh.
I want you to subscribe and like this video and push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.